And is there anything else about the new year?
In many ways, excited for the new year. And as Damien knows, we've been talking about it in our class. In many ways, trepidatious about the new year.
Mm, excited and trepidatious. And what kind of bridge is that bridge that goes from now to the new year?
It's a bridge as if it were arching over a rainbow.
Mm, Watching over a rainbow. Okay, who's got a different one? Who's going to offer their bridge? Anybody? Otherwise, we'll work with the. Oh, thank you very much, Karen. What kind of bridge have you got?
I was thinking about the Rainbow Bridge.
Ah, about Catherine's Rainbow Bridge or your own?
No, the figurative rainbow bridge that pets cross over when they pass away.
Oh, a figurative rainbow bridge that pets cross over. Whereabouts is that figurative rainbow bridge?
It's in everyone's heart and mind.
Ah, everyone's heart and mind. And is there anything else about that rainbow bridge?
Um, it makes people, I think it helps people with their sadness,
Hmm,
knowing that their pets are on a journey to a place that's better and that someday we will see them again.
that helps people with their sadness.
Mhm.
And is there anything else about the rainbow bridge?
It's just very well travailed.
Very, it's in our hearts and it's pets crossing over and it's very well travailed. And then we've got Catherine's bridge that goes over a rainbow into the new year. And who's got a different bridge? One more. I might call on Damien. Oh, Pat, thank you very much.
Hi, thank you for giving me the word. Well, I'm a translator, so I've always spoken about the language, bridging the language gap,
Mm,
trying to work as a bridge between people who need to communicate with each other and have the language obstacle.
yeah,
So,
bridging the
translator and
language.
interpreter,
Yeah,
I bridge that gap, the
bridging that
language.
gap. So what
Yeah.
kind of gap is that gap?
Whoops. Well, understanding what the speaker is intending to convey in their message, and then how the recipient of that message might figure out the meaning or understand, uh, you know,
Mm,
in best possible way.
yes, what they're intending to convey and what
That's
they're
right.
understanding. And so
Mhm.
what kind of bridge is that bridge when it's a bridge across that gap?
Well, Mike, it's I tried, the bridge is a bridge that takes into consideration both sides. So it's an empathetic bridge,
Mhm. And
quite,
then,
quite considerate, and
mm,
trying to use clear, straightforward language so that everyone understands.
mm,
It's very important to become aware of the cultures in both languages and what to say, what not to say, how to say it. It's not only the language, the words, but also the gestures and
yeah.
yeah, how the speaker conveys that message. And as an interpreter, sometimes I do that all the time naturally,
Mm. So
being
it's an
emphatic, raising my voice and.
mm. So it's an empathetic, considerate bridge.
Yes.
And does it have a size or a shape?
Straightforward.
Straightforward. It's a straightforward bridge.
Straightforward bridge. Yes.
Okay, so now we've got three more. So we've got the three we had before. We've got the wooden one, the concrete one. I'm losing a bit track of them all, but so we've now got the one over we've got the Red Steel Bridge, San Francisco. We've now got the one over the rainbow to the new year. We've got the Rainbow Bridge for the pets, and we've got the bridge across the language gap. So what are you noticing now? about the bridges?
That they went from physical to figurative.
We went from physical to figurative somehow, didn't we? Yes. Anything else you're noticing?
It still connects.
Mm,
There's still a connection. It's a connection,
It's always
whether
a
it's
connection.
physical or the language and the essence it's trying to convey. There's still a connection.
Still a connection. And in fact, that, it wouldn't be a bridge if it wasn't a connection, because that's what a bridge is. It goes from one place to somewhere else. Yeah, lovely. Anything else you're noticing? Edward?
Perhaps we're capturing some metaphors here.
Might be capturing some metaphors, just as it happens. Yeah, we're capturing some metaphors. Any other things you're noticing about these bridges?
Well, the concept of bridge is so elastic and that is used in so many different ways. For instance, when Trump talked about building a wall, people will say, let's build bridges, not walls. And so it has so many connotations. For
Absolutely.
this neighborhood, I will say it's a very multiracial neighborhood. Actually, there are a lot of multiracial children. And I think that the bridge, because it's very neighborhood. By the way, the name is Shakespeare Bridge. So it has, and I think a lot of you, I know Paul lives in the area, and you know what, and so it really serves as as a metaphor to connect different ethnicities, racial backgrounds, people who, because there are a lot of people who live here who are not from Los Angeles. So it's also bridging geographic languages. Yeah.
Yes, even though it's an actual bridge, it's still a metaphor in some
It's
ways.
definitely a metaphor. Yeah. For also bridging the neighborhood. Yeah. Getting it together.
Okay. So we've got these 6 bridges. Now, what have you been noticing about what I've been doing? What have I been up to?
Repeating, put a picture in our mind, memory.
Okay, I've been repeating. Let's put that on here. Let's make sure you can see. We're repeating. Putting a picture in your mind.
Asking for details.
Asking for details. So what have I been doing? Ask for details. What have I been doing to ask for details?
Listening.
Asking open-ended questions.
Listening and open-ended questions.
There was a question that you keep asking, Marian, is what kind of
Yes, I keep asking that.
structure? What kind of?
Yeah, what kind of? So let's put that here.
Showing
Kind of.
curiosity. Anything about now? Anything about the new year?
Yeah, we've got, is there anything else about?
Anything else?
Yeah, is there anything else about? Anyone notice any other questions or anything else I was doing or saying?
You asked where is
I
that?
asked there. Yeah, definitely.
You're going for depth.
I'm going for depth. Put that down here, going for depth. Okay, well, very good. You're getting the hang of this already. So I'm definitely repeating. I'm repeating some or maybe all of the words that people have said. I'm definitely have to listen, because otherwise I would not be able to do that. I'm definitely asking these open-ended questions, and they're very specific open-ended questions. And these are 3 of the clean questions, which are part of clean language. And I would say that these are the main 3. You can do an awful lot of work with just those 3 questions. And earlier on, Catherine, I think it was, said, when we were looking at the differences between, especially with the first three bridges, it was materials, it was location, and sometimes maybe the name. But this question, of course, is going to get you location of things. And the word that we use here for these kind of things is attributes, which can include
Yeah, you ask what do you see? Mhm.
Yeah, I asked at the beginning, you know, who's got a bridge? And then after that, I was only using these three questions. What kind of, is there anything else, and where? These other things that you've mentioned, they are kind of they are descriptions of what's happening. So people do get a picture in their mind, and so do I. But it would be possible to do it without pictures. I am asking for details, and the way that I'm asking is by asking these questions. And I might be going for depth, but that isn't the only thing that you can do with a clean question. But basically, the idea of a clean question is that I am not going to tell you what I'm thinking. That you won't know whether I think that's a good bridge or a bad bridge or a fantastic bridge. You've got no idea. I am just replaying words and asking questions in order that the person whose bridge it is can think more about it and wonder about it a bit more. And as somebody who said going for depth. Yeah, so, you know, get into more detail, go for more depth, or however you want to describe that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just do a little bit more so you can be watching again. And then after that, I'm going to be inviting you to have a go of asking each other the questions. So we're going to choose a different sense now. And we'll all start again with a brand new sense. If you haven't had a turn yet, I can encourage you to join in. But if you have had a turn, you can have another turn. So we'll have the sense of hearing, and the prompt is hear an alarm. Hear an alarm. We'll see what happens this time. Who's got an alarm that they can tell us about?
Okay.
Paul, thank you.
Sure. It's an alarm of a dog barking.
A dog barking. Oh, whereabouts is that alarm?
It's in space time when my partner is needing to leave our home in the morning to get to work on time to see their first patient.
In space time of when your partner's got to leave to get to work on time. Is there anything else about that alarm?
The sensation that it when I hear it that I have to know to give space to them so their anxiety is not spiked.
So that's lets you know to give space. Who's got a different alarm? Cecilia, let's have yours, and then we'll come to Ida, is it? Cecilia.
Sorry, I'm at the airport, so it's a little bit challenging.
No worries.
My alarm is like have never ever used an alarm. I have an internal alarm. Like I always wake up almost at the same time. Even today when I'm traveling to the airport, I just wake up. I never use an alarm except when I'm cooking or something like that. But it's just kind of very there. And everybody asks me, how come you don't use an alarm? I'm like, I don't know. I just don't need it. It's just there.
I don't need an alarm. I have an internal alarm. And when you have an internal alarm, whereabouts internal is that alarm?
Um, I don't, it's in the center of my body. It's just kind of very intuitive, an
Mm,
intuitive alarm, I
mm.
would say. I
The
just wait, yeah.
center of my body, intuitive alarm. And when you have an internal alarm like that and it's intuitive, then what happens?
I'm usually always on time for things, especially when it comes to waking up early. I'm an early riser, always been. So
Mm,
it feels very natural. And when, for whatever reason, I sleep in, which is not long, or not too often, it feels off. I feel like the day is off
mm,
when I don't listen to that internal alarm because it's there and I wake up and open my eyes, but I go back to sleep. And when I finally wake up, it feels off because I didn't listen to my internal alarm.
sometimes you don't listen to it. On the
Yeah.
other hand, always on time. So who has a different alarm? Oh, it's Ida, I was going to ask, wasn't it?
Yes, thank you. It's a car alarm of a car that is parked in my neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. There's a car alarm parked in the
Car
neighborhood.
alarm. Yeah.
And is there anything else about that alarm?
Yeah, it's really bothering me, but also it's getting me nervous because I don't know if something is happening. I don't know if it's mine. So I
Mm-hmm.
need to get out and see if it's my car or someone else.
Mm.
It breaks my state, and I think that it might be bothering other people who might be sleeping or working or sick in the
Mm.
neighborhood. And
Yeah,
and
so
if it's not my car, I cannot control.
mm. So it makes you anxious and it makes you worried about other people in the apartment, and it's not under your control. It's not your car. And and it's just outside.
It's
Is it just,
outside.
yeah.
Yeah.
And what kind of alarm is it?
It's a very noisy alarm. Um, it's really, at one point, I need to.
Very noisy alarm like this.
Very noisy.
So we've got Ida's very noisy alarm. We've got Cecilia's internal alarm, intuitive in the center of her body. And then we've got Paul's dog barking alarm that lets you know to keep space and time. So what are you noticing about the alarms? Anybody?
They serve different purposes.
Serve different purposes, yeah.
They're all personal.
They're all personal, very personal, yes. Any other things?
Trigger different feelings and reactions and
Yeah,
emotions.
yeah, they generate different feelings, reactions, and emotions. Okay, and anything else that you noticed about what I was doing?
We're asking when.
Yes, so sometimes I'm putting when in front of what you've said, and then so making it a bit contextual with the word when. I am doing that. Let's just put that there. Anything else? I think I added in one extra question when I worked with Cecilia, I think it was. Anybody spot the extra question?
Where in the body?
Yeah, we had where. I mean, the other thing I'm doing is that sometimes I'm asking whereabouts.
Whereabouts, yes.
Well,
The first question.
yeah. So the new question that I added in was then what happens? So that's also a clean question. And that one's about sequence. What happens? It's basically saying what happens next in the sequence. So we've got some questions for location or space, some for sequence, and some for attributes, which is like the form of something. And those three things together, the location, the sequence, the space, time, and form, they are really the three sort of basic fundamental metaphors that our world or our metaphorical world is constructed from. Everything kind of boils down to it has a space, it has a form, and then there's a sequence of events. So whether you think of a film or a story or an event or even just the items on your desk, they will all have form, they will all be in a location, and there will have been a sequence of events around them, like how did they get there, and then where do they go, what happens next. So again, it's something about clean language is that you can do a lot of work with a very few number of questions, because all of people's experiences will fit into these categories if you start asking them the questions. So any questions about what we've done so far?
Do you do like an entire session this way? And that's it? Yeah.
This is a little training exercise that I do because when I'm training people to use clean language, and one of the reasons I do it, or we do it in our company, is because in a minute, I'm going to show you what happens when somebody speaks. So we'll have another prompt and you'll go, oh, okay, I can see what's happening. And it's basically that we're all making assumptions about things all of the time. And you can see that even just one word, like, a bridge or an alarm. I don't know about you, but before I knew all of this about language, just kind of imagined, I didn't even think about it, but I imagined that when I thought of an alarm, I was thinking of the same alarm as other people, and same bridge, and then even more so when you get into, words like rainbow or, something that's internal. You go, okay, everyone's description of internal might be similar, but of course it's very, very different. And so what this does is it allows the person to have their own perception without being interfered with by me as a coach. When I'm doing the work as a coach, then I start with a question, what would you like to have happen, to elicit their desired outcome? And I listen for spatial words, sequence words, metaphors that might have a bit of form. And then I start asking them clean questions to expand their ideas about their own words. And generally speaking, I encourage the metaphors to come, which in turn allow them to see the structure of their own way of being in relation to that outcome.
So in a way, you're encouraging, it sounds like storytelling, because as people respond to your questions, they're telling their story of whatever they've put forth to you.
Yes, it is, except it's a kind of strange little story usually. So if I give you an example, somebody in a training the other day was being offered to be a demonstration subject for me, and she said she wanted to continue exercising in the way that she had done that day. And turned out, that she's got so many things she's doing that normally there's not time to do that exercise. And so instead of spending ages figuring out how she was going to get the time, I asked her a couple of questions, and she then said, I want this. I want to feel better about myself, and I want the motivation. And so I ask her, where is the want? Which turns out to be in her heart. And a bit later, we discover that there's a little button in the middle of her heart that is very, very keen on learning and helping people. And because she's keen on learning and helping people, that little button is pushing the heart to do more and more work and learning and work and learning. And the exercise gets dropped out of the equation. And so after a while, she realized she needed a dimmer switch on her head that would allow her to dim the enthusiasm of this button that lights up so that she can have a bit of time to herself to do the exercise. So a very novel solution, not in a kind of real world kind of way, but within these metaphors that emerge. So it is like a little story, but it's kind of different at the same time. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so let's jump to a third sense, because I'm very keen for you to have a go, but I just want to do a little extra thing. And the third one is feel velvet. Feel velvet. So what happens to you when I say feel velvet? Who's got something?
There's a softness to it.
There's a softness to it. What kind of softness is that?
Kind of like it evokes feelings of warmth and nice one. Usually it will be like with my fingers, so it will be just a good feeling of something, like texture.
Texture, warmth, and a good feeling, and softness.
Softness,
Who's got a different thing that happens?
and comfort, There's something comforting about it. Yeah.
Lovely. Who's got something different happens when I say feel velvet? Fred.
Yeah. I smell something.
What kind of thing do you smell?
Wood.
Wood. Is there anything else about that you smell wood?
That the velvet is on the bottom of and protects wood.
The velvet's on the bottom and it protects the wood. And what kind of velvet is that on the bottom?
It's thin. It's purple. And kind of cut to the shape of the base of whatever it's protecting.
So it's thin and it's purple and it's the shape of the base of what it's protecting. And that's wood. And what happens is you smell the wood. Yeah. Who's got something different happening?
Like Fred, in a different way, I first had an image of my hand touching velvet. So I had to have the image of touching it, and then I got the qualities of the velvet.
So I had to have an image, and then I got the qualities of the velvet. And what kind of velvet is it that you're touching?
Soft. And there's substance to it.
Soft and substance to it. And whereabouts are you touching it?
I'm just touching it. I'm touching it with my hand and just touching it all over.
Touching it all over with my hand. Lovely. Let's have another one. Another velvet.
I'm petting my dog, whose fur feels like velvet.
I'm petting my dog, whose fur feels like velvet. Karen, would it be okay if I asked people questions about your dog?
Sure.
So, Karen gives us a little statement. She's petting her dog. What kind of dog have you already made up? What kind of dog have you already made up in your system? Or have you not done anything with that dog? Because I know I've made up a dog. What dog have you made up? No dogs? Kimberly, you made a dog?
From any one of us.
Yeah, from any one of you. Yeah.
Mine was a golden doodle.
Oh, you've made up a golden doodle. Okay. What kind of size is that?
Medium.
Medium golden doodle. Who's made up a different dog?
Labrador Retriever.
You've made up a, say it again.
Labrador Retriever.
Labrador Retriever. Is that right?
My dog.
Yeah, okay. Kimberly, what dog did you make up?
The ears of my former dog who is now passed on. His ears were like velvet.
So you made up the ears of your former dog who's now passed on. Who's made up a different dog?
Mine was a small dog, just shaven.
A small dog. I've missed the second half what you said.
Just shaven, just back from a haircut.
Oh, just shaven, yes. Yeah, I made up my own dog, who is black and small and also gets shaven and is very velvety when she comes back from the groomers. So let's find out what the real dog is. Karen, what kind of dog is your dog?
Well, I got him from the shelter about 14 years ago, and they think he is a terrier poodle shih tzu.
Ah, terrier poodle shih tzu. And you've got him from the breed, the breed
shelter.
Shelter,
the dog shelter.
Yeah. Okay. And is there anything else about that dog?
Yeah, he's cream colored.
Oh, change the color of mine. Right.
He's small. He weighs about 14 pounds.
Uh-huh.
And he has the poodle type hair that needs to be cut every 3 months. So he does go to a groomer every 3 months.
Okay, so that's where clean comes into its own, is because we do that all the time. Somebody says something, and it might not be about their dog, it might be about something in a coaching session that's really important to them. But we cannot help, because we're human beings, we cannot help but make up our own version of it. And I don't know, because I don't know you, but many people don't know that they're doing that. And so they then imagine that the version that they've made up is the real one. And they continue the conversation as though the one they've made up in their mind is the real one. And they don't stop and ask any questions to find out what the client's one really is. And so this is really what's at the heart of clean language. It was invented by a man called David Grove, who was a clinical psychologist working often with people with lots of trauma. And he noticed that when he looked at what other therapists were doing with their clients on videos or whatever, they would often inadvertently, just by the questions they asked, be adding in or taking away or distorting what the person was talking about because of their questions. And so he made it a mission to find out how could he preserve the client's perceptions and help them to build on and extend those perceptions without contaminating it with his own language, his own sort of ideas, just inadvertently. And the other thing that he did was he noticed that when he did that, when he asked clean questions, people would often give a metaphor, as some of you have done today. They would often tell a metaphor. And because he was sticking to his rules about only using their words and only asking these clean questions, he would ask questions of their metaphors as though they were literal. So if somebody said, I'm going round in circles, he would say, where are the circles? What kind of circles? How many circles are there? And they would then build this metaphorical landscape, which was the world of their inner mind body system, sort of coming out and being spoken about. And he had a lot of success with helping people to change and to get to know themselves. And then over the years, other people took on the mantle of teaching and spreading this methodology. And that's where we are now. So what I'd like to do in the last 10 minutes is, you've got 4 or 5, if you count that as 2. You've got a few clean questions. I'm going to give another prompt, but this time I'm going to encourage you to ask each other questions. So the prompt is going to be taste salt. Taste salt. So who's got something when I say taste salt? I'm going to just start by putting it up on the board so that we can think of some questions, and then we'll get asking them. Taste salt. Who's got something happening? Fred, what's happening?
Mouth watering.
Mouth. Okay, so Fred says mouth watering. So it's only given us one word, so we don't have to choose a word. It's very easy what we're going to ask about, but what we do have to do is choose a question. So we're choosing from where or whereabouts. Is there anything else about? What kind of? Or then what happens? So who'd like to choose a question and ask Fred a question? Kimberly, off you go.
What kind of salt are you tasting, Fred?
Great question.
Very, very coarse salt.
Very coarse salt. So now the salt, I forgot you could ask about the salt. That was well spotted, Kimberly. So you could ask about the salt or the mouth watering. So now we've got these words and you can ask about any of them. So who's got a question for Fred?
Fred, is there anything else about the texture of the salt?
Yeah, the coarseness reminds me of almost of a spiky is the word that comes up.
Okay, so now we've got a few more words. It reminds me, and then spiky is the word that comes up. Up. So let's have another question.
What happens after you taste the salt?
Two things. One is yummy, and the other is probably guilt.
Oh. Okay, one more question for Fred.
And then what happens, Fred?
I take another bite.
Lovely. Now, if you're new to clean language and you're not in a coaching session, then what I would suggest is that you limit the number of questions you ask to 2 or 3. And the reason for that is because you can see that it goes to places where you might not be expecting to talk about. So Fred might not have been expecting to talk about his guilt about eating his salt, or even the fact that it was spiky. Because if you only ask clean questions, the person answering has to fall back on their own perceptions, their own ideas. They don't get any input. And so they reveal more of their own thinking, which obviously in a coaching session is great. But if you're in a bar or asking these questions of your family, you will get people going, what are you trying to do? What are you up to? And, if you hit on something like guilt in the middle of a little practice, best not to keep going there until you've got a bit more learning or a bit more experience, because you never know what you're going to find if you start trailing down these avenues.
Marian, sorry for jumping in. How would you handle that, though, since you're experienced of the guilt?
Well, I don't tend to ask my friends and family these questions. I just behave as me in an ordinary context. But I know that when people get hold of them, they're like, oh, let me try this out with you. And it's just natural and normal. And so I'm just giving you a little warning. I wouldn't nowadays, I mean, I might have done 20 years ago, but nowadays I just don't feel the need to practice clean language on my friends and colleagues, but I just know from lots of experience that people go away and they go, oh my goodness, this happened. And it's because it reveals things very quickly. So it's just keep it safe, keep it tight for a little while.
But in a coaching session, you could explore the guilt with the same questions.
You can, absolutely. With the same questions, you can ask, where is the guilt? Another question that will help you get into a metaphor would be, supposing the person says, I have guilt in my chest. Then you might say, does that guilt in your chest have a size or a shape? And then they might say, oh, it's heavy, like, what might it be like? Heavy like a weight on a scale. It's heavy. And so now you've got a metaphor and you can work with that metaphor. But again, you'd only be working with that guilt the same as in any other kind of coaching if that was relevant to their desired outcome. If you just accidentally hit upon it because you're asking about salt, then we're not doing that. But if this was relevant, then you can go in there and get a metaphor for it. And another way you can get a metaphor is to say that guilt is like what? But there's not so much need to do that, because if you start listening to people, you'll find that they actually naturally speak in metaphors, most people anyway. And all you've got to do is notice the metaphor and then ask questions about those metaphors. Yeah. Okay, we've got 3 minutes left. Any questions now?
I think sharing with people at the end what is clean language was a much better strategy than answering at the beginning of the session. I think that by doing what you have done, Marian, I think everybody can get a really nice idea of what is clean language and how it works. That was really, really amazing.
Good.
You have a question or comment before we wrap up?
No, go ahead. It's all right. Yeah.
You got a question, Edward?
Yeah, go ahead.
What does continuing education look like for discovering clean language?
Do you have any
Okay.
offers?
Yes. Well, one thing you can do is read about it and look on YouTube and all kinds of things like that. There's my book is called Clean Approaches for Coaches. I'll write on here. And there are other books. And we run a program called Core Skills, which is it's got CCEs. I think it's got 31 CCEs. So that's a possibility. I haven't got any dates for that yet, but if anyone is interested in that and you put your name and email in the chat, I can get back to you when I've got some information.
And I would also be happy, Marian, to share that in our newsletter if you want to share with me the link.
Yes, okay.
The information. so people can, because I do believe it can be very interesting for people to learn more about how to practice it. And Marian is also invited to come to our America's Coaching Supervision Network. We have set up a time, correct, Marian, for you to come?
Yes, yeah, I'm coming in February, and we'll do a different activity. I tend to work in a very interactive way rather than talking at people or sharing slides. So come prepared to speak.
Cool, that's great. And do you know what? We have a conference in April, and maybe I wonder if you want to present. We need to talk about that offline, Marian, but it would be nice to have you at the conference. It's a conference for supervisors, but it's open to everybody. So
Lovely.
here, the people who are not supervisors but are interested, you are welcome to join. Take the advantage to come and participate and learn from very experienced colleagues. And it's going to be April 11 and 12. So people maybe here want to put it in your calendars already, April 11 and 12. And for the supervisor here, like Sergeant, Aida, Kimberly, Paul, Gigi, it would be great if you want to present too. So we were inviting everybody to participate. So, and it's not about lecturing. It's not about coming as experts. It's about facilitating learning spaces like Marian did today so beautifully. So Marian, thank you very much. It was really... You did a really great demonstration. This is the kind of experiences I believe that are the ones that are more meaningful. I think these are the kind of things you don't forget. I promise I will not forget these bridges. We'll keep that. This metaphor, this I think that I'm thinking of how I can use that with my clients. I'm sure that everybody here is thinking, okay, how we can bring this to our own work. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but play with it. Play with it. Try to, and get her book. It's really nice. I use the cover of your book, Marian, for our flyer. So if you look at the flyer of the event, you will see that is the cover of her book. So you can highly recommend her book. Karen, a comment or question before we go?
Quick question, where will you be posting this recording?
The recordings are always posted in YouTube. They are always posted in my newsletter the following month. But now we have been live in LinkedIn. So it's already available in LinkedIn right now. After you finish here, you can go back and listen to the recording. And maybe, Marian, if people ask questions or comments, you can also respond. So Marian, thank you very much.
Yeah,
I
I've just
really
realized,
appreciate you taking the time doing this and looking forward to keep collaborating with you next year.
you take care and have a lovely, lovely Christmas and New Year.
Yes, happy holidays to everybody.
Thank you very much. Bye bye.